And action. All right. What's up, Sequoia Nation? This is Dr. Schilling bringing this week's Wednesday Wellness Minutes, and we are super excited to bring you this week's edition to talk to you about the ketogenic diet. It's a often misunderstood concept to the extent that I wanted to make some notes to actually make sure I cover some serious points so you understand what it is and all the different points about it. Generally speaking, the ketogenic diet was developed by different physicians, most notably at the Mayo Clinic here in Minnesota, to help people with epilepsy, to decrease the volatility in the brain and calm down the sugar overload that can happen in the brain. So they were able to calm down these neurological seizures-like symptoms for epileptic patients and other people as well by decreasing the blood sugar levels. So you want to keep that in mind as far as a historical context, if you will. Originally, the hardcore keto is like 20 grams of carbs or less a day, and that is pretty oppressive for no matter who you are. If you eat any vegetables, you're pretty much going to hit that pretty quick. Later on, they started moderating it a little bit to make sure people were getting enough carbs. So you could, generally speaking, 50 grams of carbs a day is the recommendation. And you want to get those from your green leafy vegetables and your healthy complex starches and things like Yukon Gold potatoes and yams and things like that. But you want to understand that it can be very helpful for a lot of people. A lot of people are doing it these days to lose weight. One of the major things you want to appreciate when you're going into a keto is that you're going to be increasing your fat consumption a lot compared to what you have normally done. And so you want to understand how that's going to affect your body and how your body is going to adapt to that metabolism of those fats. If you don't have a gallbladder, a lot of people don't. If you don't have one that's functioning very well, the ketogenic diet can be very problematic for you from a digestive standpoint. Bye, Amelia.
Bye.
So just keep in mind that you want to make sure your gallbladder is functioning very well. If you start doing a keto and you're getting a lot of burping, belching, nausea even, pushback after you've eaten, you want to understand that you're probably going to want to support it. We use Gallbladder Plus or Gallbladder ND, things like that to help support the gallbladder. If you need to do a flush, we have instructions on how to do a flush. Very easy to do. You basically load fats, which is part of what the keto end up doing, but then you drop them and then you really flush out that gallbladder. So keep that in mind. We have the tools for that if you need help adapting to the ketogenic diet, because there is an adaptation period, which I'll get to in a second. One of the major helpful parts about this is it balances your blood sugar. If you understand that blood sugar is probably the leading cause of any illness in our lives these days, then you're going to understand that even if you live a modified ketogenic diet, which is what I personally do, a modified ketogenic diet, using high levels of fat, high levels of protein, a lot of green leafy vegetables, and some starches, that's what I found is the best mix for me. That's what we've developed here as the Vitality Food Guide, if you've heard me speak about it before. So some variation of having higher fats and lower carbs is going to be good for you, especially avoiding the refined carbs, added sugars, and things like that. I personally try to avoid anything more than 25 grams of added sugar in anything I eat per day. The biggest culprit for me is if I eat a bar, like a Pro bar or some type of bar that has added sugar in it, something that's date-based, things like that. That's where you're going to get most of it. If you're eating plants, so my basic motto is if you can go out in the field and pull it out of the ground, or if you can go out there and shoot it with a bow and arrow, pretty much you can consume any of it. If it comes in a box and it's been made in a factory, you generally speaking want to avoid that because there's going to be all kinds of garbage in there. And just as a public service announcement, anything that on the package, I was talking to a patient about this the other day, anything that has a label claim on it says something free or heart healthy or Diabetes Association approved, you want to run from all that stuff. Because if there's a label claim, they're trying to draw your attention away from it. It's called wagging the dog. They're trying to draw your attention away from what's actually in there that's not good for you and putting something on the label that says, look, it's so fine. It's fantastic. You should buy 10 of them. Okay, so just keep that in mind. As I mentioned before, the adaptation process can last anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks. Those 2 weeks can be troublesome for some people because they usually don't amp up their fats fast enough in order to compensate for the decrease in the carbs. Now, you're never going to fully fall apart as far as an energy or brain standpoint when it comes to carbohydrates because half of protein breaks down into carbohydrates via the amino acid cycle. We won't go into that big nonsense, but your brain needs about 50 grams of carbs a day to optimize its function. The rest of it can be fat from ketones, which hence the ketogenic diet. And so as we lose weight and things like that, and you break down fat tissue, it's going to break up into ketones and triglycerides and other things like that. But keep in mind, your protein is going to be your source for those amino acids, which is going to be broken down into the glucose that your brain can use as fuel. Your brain will work optimally on a fat-based diet, on a keto-based diet. So I personally eat an avocado, pretty much an avocado in the morning and an avocado at lunch. I personally have found that living by the Vitality Food Guide and restricting my intense amounts of fat and protein at night, I'm able to decrease the stress on my digestive system, which then allows me to sleep better. All right. So the Vitality Food Guide is usually really good because it's a modified keto and it keeps your blood sugar low, right, all day long. So you don't want to put a bunch of carbs into the system in the morning because you still have your muscles and your liver full of glycogen from the day before. You want to burn through those before you start adding back in. Okay, so this will help you decrease your inflammation, decrease your pain, increase your energy, and help you sleep better. So keep that in mind. Whether you're doing keto and or what we do is the modified Vitality Food Guide, that's where you want to go with that. So we don't need to go into all the nerdy things of how many ketones you should have in your urine and in your blood and things like that, but one of the things you want to appreciate is that if you don't have proper insulin balance, which most people with metabolic syndrome, big bellies and things like that, they have insulin resistance all day long. Most people in this country are either already diabetic or pre-diabetic. They just haven't received the diagnosis yet. They just haven't gone to the point where their labs are showing up under the gigantic bell-shaped curve, what was the medical world. They have to fall under certain ranges to be in or out of balance, and therefore most people are either pre or already diabetic. Therefore, the ketogenic diet can be very helpful for people who are diabetic and or pre-diabetic with metabolic syndrome. So moving forward, we want to understand that you're going to need to amp up your fat levels pretty quick when you're on the keto because your brain is going to have to switch its fuel source. When it's been accustomed to being bombarded by sugars and your insulin levels have been high for so long, it's going to feel a shift. And therefore, you need that fuel back in there. So make sure you're keeping those fat levels high. And again, it can last up to 1 to 2 weeks. And that can be brain fog and lack of energy and all kinds of stuff that doesn't feel real good. But you got to stick with it. One of the key points to take away from the ketogenic diet or anything you're going to attempt, you need to stick with it. It's not just a flash in the pan. It's a lifestyle. Like, think of it as a lifestyle. Don't throw the word diet out of the dictionary. Get it out of your vernacular. Forget that's even part of your vocabulary because diet implies in the back of your head it's something short term. Like, oh, I'll do the keto for a while. I'll lose some weight and blah, blah, blah. What usually happens ultimately is people end up gaining the weight back as a result of reverting back to their sugar cravings and things like that. If for some reason you feel like you cannot get over your sugar cravings and you are limited or feel controlled even by them, we can use QNRT to help that. We can balance your brain, balance the neurochemistry through that. In short order here, we're going to have what's called neurofeedback. It's going to be a tool we're going to be using to help modulate people's brain waves to get them into more calm states, helping them sleeping better and things like that. So stay tuned for that. That's just a tip that's coming down the pipeline. Let's just talk about a few of the benefits of ketogenic diet or even the modified elimination diet, if you will. So reducing your appetite, reducing your fat storages. So most people think fat is your enemy, right? We all, I shouldn't say we all, there's some pretty young people these days. There are a lot of us who went through the fat-free food fad, right? Fat-free is the best, it's this and that, but what happened was they just jacked up the sugar. So as the scales tip, fat comes down, sugar goes up. It has to balance, okay? Because your brain needs a certain level of stimulation. So keep that in mind. Your fat stores will come down as you're doing the keto once you have optimized your body for fat burning. And it doesn't happen immediately. It's got to be a process, okay? So your body's got to adapt to it. But it's going to improve how your brain thinks. If you're not already familiar with this, cancer loves sugar. In fact, they diagnose cancer via what's called a PET scan. It's positron emission tomography, which is a fancy word of they take these little sugar molecules and they put some radiation on it and then they inject it in your blood. And then they put it in front of a screen and take a really, really powerful X-ray and it shows up, where does it show up, right? And if they find hot spots, that's generally speaking where quote-unquote cancer is, right? Your cancer is really, we'll get back to the basics, it's your own tissues that have gone rogue, right? The brain hasn't been able to kill them off and they're just separating themselves from everything else. But sugar is used to diagnose cancer. So if you wanted to avoid cancer, what's a good thing to do? Get sugar out of your diet, okay? We don't need to go into statistics about how many pounds of sugar Americans eat a year. It's obscene. You can look it up on the internet. But just understand things like neurological disorders, as we mentioned before, epilepsy, people that are dealing with PCOS. Think about PCOS as an insulin issue, right? Fibrocystic breast, fibrocystic ovaries, ovarian, or rather endometritis, endometriosis, things like that. Think first blood sugar balance. Think hormones out of whack because my blood sugar is out of whack. Insulin is the king master hormone. If it is out of whack due to a bunch of carbs, it's going to mess everything up. So you're going to get PCOS and things like that. And if you adapt to a ketogenic diet, it's going to actually improve your physical athletic performance. Ketogenic diet is not geared ideally for those doing endurance. Like if someone's going to go out and run a soccer match, wouldn't recommend the ketogenic diet necessarily for them, and not a full-blown ketogenic diet, because they're going to burn through those stores of glycogen in their muscles and liver real quick. Okay, and the fat is really inefficient as far as that endurance. It's like 0.4 of a molecule for a ketone versus 1 to 2 units of energy from sugar. So if you're going to do an endurance activity, you're going to need to supplement some type of hopefully a healthy type of sugar into your diet, which is going to help you maintain that longevity and be able to push through to the end of the match, if you will. We already mentioned promoting fat loss and things like that. It is thought of as a restrictive way of eating. Once you adapt to it, though, if it becomes your way of life, it's not that big a deal. You just have to understand it. That's why I recommend the Vitality Food Guide, because it is a modified keto, nothing full-blown, and you can enjoy your carbs at night, which is going to boost your serotonin, your feel-good hormones are going to get all nice and relaxed, and then you go off to la-la land and sleep real well. So keep that in mind. That can be very helpful. Maximizing performance. So just a couple key things here. Ratio-wise, 75% of your fat, or rather your consumption of diet, should be from fat, which leaves about 20 from protein, and then 5 from carbs. Okay, so keep that in mind. It's a general ratio to have a 75-25. Okay, 75 fat, 20 from protein, which is going to give you the sugar that your brain needs, and then 5% from actual complex carbs like starches and things like that. That's really helpful. Increasing your dietary consumption of fat for athletes from protein is going to help you maintain that endurance. Remember a minute ago we mentioned the idea of being able to sustain the energy through those matches. If you're an endurance athlete, maybe increase from 20 grams of protein, or 20% rather, up to 30. And then so drop your fat down by 10. Okay, so just balance that out. That's going to give you greater longevity as far as being able to get through those matches and things like that. In essence, if you're an athlete, endurance athlete, 3 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight as a general thing. Okay, so let's talk about some of the sources of good fats, right? We don't just want to put anything in. You don't want to go get a bag of Doritos and, hey, look, I ate a bunch of fat. Fantastic, right? That's not going to do any good. Or a bag of Lay's potato chips. Butter, coconut oil, olive oil, avocados, nuts, fishes, and seeds. Fishes? I think I just said fishes. Fish, all right? Fish is good for you. Cold water, salmon, things like that. That's really good for you. In order to maintain your muscle balance, you're going to want to make sure your nitrogen's staying strong. So in order to maintain that, get your leafy greens in there. That's really good for you. That's going to help boost your sodium up. So if you need to help support, Premier Pink Salt is really good for balancing, or rather maintaining that sodium balance. And then the green leafy vegetables can be for the potassium and things like that. Fiber, if you're not eating a lot of roughage, right, plants and stuff like that, you're going to want to have some type of fiber source, because people can tend to get constipated or backed up, if you will, because they don't have enough things pushing it through. Think of fiber as like a bulldozer, and all the food you've digested and then your bacteria in your gut is digested and it's processed and it needs to get pushed out. That fiber is the battering ram, like push it all out. So keep that in mind. You want to make sure you're getting enough green leafy vegetables, and if you don't, then you're going to want to up your fiber levels. I don't recommend drinking coffee. Some people need stimulants in order to get their athletic performance up if they're not exercising between 3 and 5 in the afternoon. Some people recommend coffee, but caffeine in general is what is going to help maintain that athletic performance. And then magnesium is really important. Magnesium is involved in 300 different enzyme reactions in your body. It's the #1 mineral deficiency on the planet, so keep that in mind. But these are just some ideas to help you understand, kind of demystify the whole ketogenic. Is it a fad? Is it really good for you? Generally speaking, it can be good for you, and a lot of people will benefit from living on a modified keto or a full keto. What you don't want to start confusing is ketogenic versus ketoacidosis. Okay, ketosis versus ketoacidosis. Ketoacidosis is an actually acidic condition in your blood because of a lack of insulin, and that's what happens when people get into diabetes. So if you're concerned about that, if you're extremely overweight, I would not be concerned with dumping too many ketones in the bloodstream. People are usually in ketoacidosis because of metabolic imbalances and their insulin is just out of whack, right? It's just the the cells of the pancreas just can't produce enough insulin to manage all the sugar, and it just finally gets worn out. So keep this in mind. Share this with your friends and family. Share this with people you think are considering the ketogenic diet or are already on it. It's really important. There's a ton of information out there as far as, is this good for me? Is it bad for me? Should I do it? Should I not do it? Ultimately, what you should realize about food is it shouldn't make you feel any better or any worse. If you're understanding that food should be just keeping you feeling great, like if this is great, you just want to feel here, right? Granted, you're going to go up and down a little bit, but you don't want anything that makes you feel, woo, I feel awesome, or oh my gosh, I feel like I want to go to bed, okay? So if you're getting the after lunch sags, you're all of a sudden you're at your desk going, oh, something like that. It used to happen to me because I used to eat half a plate of rice, half a plate of pasta. I used to eat granola bars as snacks, and I'd be in class and I'd just be falling asleep. And as soon as I started putting nuts in and taking carbs out, and that's when it clicked for me. That's when I said, oh, wow, okay, I can stay awake and I'm actually sharper. So understand, as a baseline, your brain operates best on fat. You can get the carbohydrates that your brain needs from protein, but just make sure you're really getting a lot of green leafy vegetables in there. And that could be, cauliflower, broccoli, asparagus, kale, Swiss chard, collard greens, mustard greens, just get them all in there, right? And if you don't like the taste, put them all in a blender, whip it up, throw maybe a teaspoon of honey in there, a little cayenne pepper, maybe some honey and even apple cider vinegar. Whip that up and just chug it down. It's going to taste funky, but you get them in, right? It's going to help your microbiome too, because a lot of your blood sugar balance is dependent on your microbiome. So there's just a lot of intricacies about this, and everybody's needs are different. That's why people come here, because we use the kinesiology to give us the information we need to know about your body and what's going to be optimal for you. Right? For some reason, some people can handle a lot of undigested fibers and their gut biome works great. Other people, it just bloats them like a Zeppelin, right? You Goodyear blimp, you're just bloating up here and it just feels horrible. So that's why we use the muscle testing to get that feedback and understand what your body needs and how we can help you the best. So let us know how we can help you. Share this with your friends and family. Give it a thumbs up. Let us know we're doing things that are helpful for you, helping demystify things that are just completely out there for you and a lot of misinformation. So post in the comments what we can do as far as educating you, what topics you want us to talk about, because we want this to be helpful for you. We want to make sure that you're getting the information you need to optimize your living. And we'll bring it to you every week happily, and we'll probably start expanding in other days of the week. It won't be called Wednesday Wellness Minutes. We'll figure out some different themes for it. But looking forward to seeing you guys next week. Take good care. Have a great night. See ya.